I think basically I should have actually put the buttonholes right on the edge. I think I wasn't brave enough to do that. I'm not a Victorian. But yeah, otherwise I think it's a pretty good bodice. Let me just show you the back. It is not tight in any way, but it does provide sort of a smooth fit. So the next step we're going to be the skirts. Yes, skirts plural. Hello you guys, so welcome to vlog number 2, I believe, on my 1880s Jane Porter costume. A bit of historical Disney for you. The bodice should have been done in the first one. I think I would have done an intro to this video. Anyway, I'm about to start on the skirt. This is the underskirt, which is the Truly Victorian 1885 four-core underskirt. So I'm cutting this out of the brown fabric. I'm not sure if I'm going to actually cut 2 of these and make one with the poofs in the brown and then like a shorter version, probably like around here in the silk, maybe? I'm not sure, we'll see. But that's the plan for now. So I've cut up the pattern pieces and I'm just going to cut it out of, I'm not making a mock-up for this, it's just a skirt. It should be fine. I'll cut it a little large anyway and yeah. Also you guys, I've lived in flats with carpet for years and I've only just realised you can actually pin into the carpet. What? So for this pattern you have to cut this ruffle piece. So they just tell you to cut 5 of these on the fold. I just wanted to give you guys a tip in case you haven't done this before. But what I do, and you only use this if you don't mind wasting a little bit of fabric. I don't, because it'll save me on time and effort. So what I did was I just measured roughly how much I would need to cut out this pleat. Then I made a fold and I actually pleated the fabric over until I had several different layers. And then you have to be a bit careful to try and maintain all the grain aligned, and it won't be, you know, it won't be very precise, but it will save you time because then all you can do is just pin this in place and cut through all the layers. You need good shears for this. But yeah, just the top tip. Hello you guys, the sewing continues. Look at my adorable little darts. With the darts done, the next step is just to sew up the side seams. So and bam! Side seams are done. So the next step is actually to do with the back piece of the skirt. So I'm just going to go grab that so we can talk about it. But I really wanted to make that really cool transition. Okay. So this is the back piece of the skirt. It literally just looks like a massive rectangle of fabric at the moment. But this skirt comes with 2 options. One is to make like a bustle, they call it a poof or a bouffant, I guess is the name for it, at the back. And for that, they give you some pleats to make at the sides. And there are some, I love fluff, but there are some dots. No, that's fluff. Dots. There are some dots. And you like scrunch up the fabric at those dots together to make like volume. They do say you can interline this part of the skirt back panel with sort of netting to make it stand up a bit more, but I am not going to bother. I don't really have anything suitable, so that's it. So right now what I'm going to do is going to pleat up the sides and then baste that into place, and I think then I need to sew this to the side seams. I also need to figure out where the closure for this skirt is because it wasn't at the side front. It's clearly not at the back. Yeah, weird one. Hello you guys. So we are night sewing again because the days have been very hectic. But as you can hear, I hope, we have a very crisp cotton ruffle. So I just sewed all the ruffle panels together with a simple seam. I didn't have to finish it because I actually used the grain line here. So this is the selvage edge. So that won't fray, and so that saves me a little bit of work. And then the other thing I did, which might shock you, is that I did not hem this by hand. I think it would take me hours and I don't really want to do it. So instead what I did was I did a tiny rolled hem here, and this was just using the rolled hem foot on my machine. So the way it does it is just it turns the fabric under and stitches it really close. This is really useful, but I will say it does take a little while to get used to it. It's quite a tricky foot to use in my opinion, and I still don't have a good method for doing the seam bits. It always goes a bit wonky. But yeah, it really does save on time. If you don't have this kind of foot, what you can do is turn the fabric under, so 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and then roll it under again and sew again. It does take a little bit longer, but it's also pretty fast. I think that'll be it for tonight. So I'm not sure how much of the pleating footage I will have included, but oh my god, this ruffle has been hell. I don't know what's wrong with me. Pleating should be easy. I've pleated before. Get it together. But basically, I was trying to find a quick way to do it. So instead I spent 10 hours faffing between which way to do it. Because you know, that makes sense. So I spent most of the evening yesterday and the morning today just doing this. So you can see they're not the most even pleats in the world, but they're just for the hem and I think it'll look really nice. I tried a bunch of different ways to do it. I didn't like any of them. And the problem was that the way I like the pleats to be like quite deep, so I'm going to untack one of the edges once I actually sew it on, so that one of the edges is free, of course. But the way I liked it was that it was for the pleats to be quite deep, so that when you walk they like, you know, ruffle. But basically the pattern pieces that I had cut out it wasn't long enough to allow for me to pleat in this way and still fit the hem of the skirt. So I kept trying to find ways around it so I didn't have to cut new pattern pieces, hem the edges and sew them to this, which is exactly what I ended up doing only 8 hours later. So I pleated the whole thing, realized I needed 2 more strips. I hemmed the additional 2 strips, added them onto this, and then pressed it all nicely, and yeah, it's done. I think it's about 3 meters long. No, it's 2.5 meters long, I think. So because I got so frustrated with how long that ruffle was taking, I sort of banged out the rest of the skirt this afternoon, and so I didn't film a lot of progress, I'm very sorry. But it's a really easy pattern to follow, I find. Skirts usually are. So what's happened since? I've pleated the back. I actually didn't realize until after I sewed the waistband on, but the pleats are actually going the wrong way. This is inside out, by the way. And so I pleated the back. I did actually extend it into the side seams a bit, otherwise I'd have to repleat the whole thing. And you know what? If you're pleating and you realize it's not gonna work out, but you don't want to undo it, but then you feel like a fraud because you're smushing it or flushing it. Because you're smushing your pleats. This is your permission to do it. Do it. Just get it done. Whatever. The Victorians didn't care. Why should you? Anyway. Pleated the back, added the waistband. The waistband, I didn't actually use the pattern that was the pattern piece that was included with the pattern because it's quite a thick waistband, and I much prefer my waistbands to be no wider than 1 inch, and it's not interlined or interfaced or anything, just to keep the bulk out of the waist. And yeah, it's pleated, attached. I then just flipped the waistband to the wrong side, and then I just whip stitched it down by hand. And then the next step is this contraption, which looks very odd because this is the inside. But basically, you have to sew all these different kinds of tapes. So these 3 tapes are sewn to the waistband, and then they are sewn to points marked in the pattern. And this sort of helps give that bustle a lift. There were also some pleats in the back panel on the side, just by marked in the pattern. So there's a lot of pleating going on to get that bustle up. And then these 2 side tapes are just sewn to the side seam, and then you tie them just to support that bustle. So I'm just going to turn this skirt inside out so you guys can see what it looks like. And then under here I've just got my grand bustle petticoat that I made with a Truly Victorian pattern a few years ago. I'll show you that too. So here's the bustle petticoat. So, I mean, it does the job. It's not the nicest thing ever. I sewed it a few years ago before I had, let's call them standards. But you can see there's lots of raw edges that were left. And it's actually quite small on me now because my body has changed in the past few years. But whatever, it works just fine. And then there's a petticoat that goes over this, which I haven't dug out of the closet yet, but will at some point, I suppose. And yeah, so this is, it's got wire in here, ruffles, which is really nice. And it's got some wire around the bottom as well. Not wire, it's steel, it's actually steel boning. So here is the poof back. You can see the difference here. This is the difference in my corset, pretty much. So yeah, all in all, I really like it. So the last things I have to do are I need to actually add a closure onto here, and then I need to hem it. And I have the ruffle to attach. So basically I had to wait until I did all of this to try it on and mark the hem, because I know for a fact that this is too long for me, because they said it's going to be 40 inches long and I'm pretty short, and I want this to be quite short so that I can show off the shoes. So yeah, what I'm going to do is try it on, measure the hem, and then attach the ruffle to the top so that the bottom of the ruffle hits the hem, and hem it, and then it should be done. Hello you guys, so I just tried on the skirt to mark the hem, and this is how much I have to take off. This is about 8 inches. So I knew this because I'm short, and they did say that the skirt is made to be 40 inches long, which is way more than I need. But I also took out quite a lot because I want to make it shorter, which I'm pretty sure is not historically accurate. I'm going to try to find some more fashion plates to see if there's any sort of walking skirts or walking suits or anything like that. Probably maybe ice skating stuff will be shorter. I think I've seen some of those. But anyway, more of active suit, I guess. Some of them are shorter, but basically I wanted to show off the shoes because I feel like Jane's shoes are very iconic. So I've marked off 8 inches, but obviously that's without the hem allowance, so I think I'm going to do 6. So I have a simple hem, or maybe a bit more. No, I think a small hem will be fine. And then after I sew down the hem, I will be attaching the ruffle. And then I just need to add a closure to this and this will be done. Yay! The other thing I wanted to mention is this is the pile of my bustle and petticoat. Because this skirt is quite short, the petticoat, not the bustle cage, but the petticoat actually shows through. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to make a tuck just there where the first ruffle starts to take it up by 4 inches, and I'm just going to baste it down. I've done this before for petticoats. It's just because I don't want to make a new one. There's no point. This one is fine. And just by basting it, that means this will be easily removable if I need to use it for something else soon. So I've just finished the hem, so I thought I'd come and show you guys because I made a big mistake and I haven't been feeling well, so I haven't filmed. And basically don't sew when you're not feeling well because you make bad decisions. So the first thing I did was I tried the skirt on over the petticoats and the bustle and all of that. And then I sort of averaged it out and marked it on the skirt, and then I cut off so I had enough, so I had 3 inches left to make the hem. However, I guess the marking must have been really wonky because after I cut out the 3 inches, I put it back on my dress form to even it out so that it was an equal 7 inches off the floor across the whole thing. And towards the back, even with the extra 3 inches, I barely had enough to turn under. So instead what I ended up doing was I just trimmed back the whole of the seam allowance so that it was, you know, an inch where I could and then pretty small in other places. And then I turned it under and I sewed it back machine. I haven't sewn a hem by machine in a long time, but basically there's going to be a ruffle, the pleated ruffle over this, so you won't be able to see the hem anyway. So I thought it would just save me some time and effort. So the next step now is that I'm going to go through my lace stash because I think I'm going to add a ruffle of lace underneath the hem, so that it just peeks through, because I think she's got those like little scallop edges on the dress, which I think is meant to imitate the petticoat underneath being seen. But I don't want to add a ruffle of lace to my actual petticoat. So yeah, I think I'm just going to add like a little flounce so that it just peeks through underneath this underskirt. I'm not sure if I have anything in my stash that will do. We'll see. I'm really hard at committing to use lace. This has a scalloped edge. Because then that lace is gone forever, do you know what I mean? This is nice. This is really nice. So I need about 2.5 meters because that's the hem of the skirt. And it should be white and hopefully have a scalloped edge. Ooh, maybe this. I'll show you what I end up picking. So I thought I'd just show you my 2 options. I went through the whole of my lace stash and these are my 2 options. So this would be the most historically adequate one, which is just an embroidered cotton eyelet lace. It's really nice and I really like that it's got the scalloped edges. However, I just measured it and I think I'm missing about 10 centimeters for it to work for the skirt. Oh. And it wouldn't be able to be gathered anyway, it would just have to be like this because I don't have a lot of it at all. But it is really nice. I might pin it on and see what I like. Then the other option is this, which doesn't have a scalloped edge, it's more like a triangular edge. But this is the lace that I used on the neckline of my first Jane costume, so I thought that would be really sweet, and I think I have enough and it's already lightly gathered because I gathered all of the lace and then just used what I needed. And I think there's enough here to do the whole hem. So, I mean, it's not historically adequate at all. I mean, I don't think so anyway. But it might look cute. It might look a bit out of place. I'm going to pin both of them on and see what I like. And show you guys as well. And probably make an Instagram poll about it because I can never decide by myself. So here's the other option. And I think we've got a winner. I really like this. And it has that whole thing about being from the previous Jane costume. It's quite discreet but still evokes the scallop edge really nicely. And I have just enough. Just enough. So I think it'll be a really good use of this little scrap. And yeah, I'm going to just adjust the positioning of it and just hand sew it into place with some sort of large tacking stitches, I think, because it's going to have the pleated flounce over top, so that stitching line won't be visible either. Yeah, good progress. I'm happy with this. Hello you guys, so I just cut out my panel pieces for the overskirt, which are over here. They just need to be pressed really nicely. But I just wanted to talk to you guys a bit about sewing decisions. I don't know if you guys come across this. I struggle with this a lot because I'm a very indecisive person. But basically when I have to make one of these big decisions, I just sort of sit on it for a little while, as long as I can. Sometimes I need to move on with it and I just make a decision. But so basically, I've just draped this little extra piece of silk that I have because my decision I need to make now is whether I want to interline the overskirt or not. So interlining is a layer of fabric that you add to another fabric to make it stronger or stiffer or more stable. As you can see here, I don't know if it was visible in the other parts of the videos, but my silk is super lightweight. It's super thin, but it does have a good sense of body. So for example, this bit is just pinned and loosely pleated, but you can see here, and this isn't even pressed, like it just holds the pleat quite nicely. Yeah, so a couple of things to consider. If you interline it, it's number one, a lot more work. You have to flatline, so you have to put the two pieces of fabric together, wrong sides facing each other, and then you need to either hand sew it or machine sew it together. For these big pieces, I usually do it by hand because it can shift while you're in the machine, especially with my personal setup. So that's a lot more time consuming. Secondly, it does make the fabric heavier. So this is a really nice lightweight silk, which means that the skirts would actually not be very heavy if I made the overskirt out of this, which is quite tempting, to be honest. But then the other thing that might happen is that with the weight of the rest of the silk, it might not hold its shape as well as this little scrap is holding. It's really hard to tell. What I might do is pin the pieces of the skirt together, just roughly, and then put them on the dress form and pleat them and see what happens then. Okay, so I'm not really sure what's going on, but this is definitely not working. So I pinned the front panel to the side panel, and the side panels are then pleated. But can you see how big this is? I don't think it's meant to be this big. I might have messed up on the cutting. But I think the front panel is definitely too big. So I might just, so what I'm going to do now is, I think it does need interlining. I'm going to use, I have that little bit of yellow cotton over there, which doesn't quite match, but it'll be fine. And I'm just gonna cut. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unpin this whole mess, compare the front panel back up to the pattern, and then use a pattern to cut out panels from the yellow cotton, and then hand baste all of the panels to their corresponding silk panels. This fabric, you guys, even without like a filter or, you know, video editing, it's just like liquid gold. It's beautiful. Anyway, I've interlined it with the yellow cotton. It actually doesn't match too poorly, you know, it's okay. And it has helped with its weight, and I think this was the right decision in the end. All I did was I pinned it and then I sewed large basting stitches around all of the edges, and this had to be done on my dinner table because it's the only flat place I could do it on. And then I've pinned the front to the side pieces and sewn that seam, which you can see here. I've just pressed it really nicely. And I think the front piece still looks way too wide. But we'll see, maybe I'll make a decorative pleat or something. We'll figure it out. And then the thing the instructions tell you to do next is to hem it. I've just pressed in the 1.5 inch seam allowance they give for the hem, because as you know, I had to shorten the underskirt quite a lot. I think it was about 6 inches in the end because I'm quite short. And I wanted this to be quite short, so I think I might have to shorten this or like pleat some extra bits to make it shorter. So I've only ironed that edge, and then I'll baste it or pin it or something for while I'm working. But yeah, so the next step in the instructions is to fold pleats in sides, bringing bottom of pleat marks to meet top of pleat marks. Baste in place. Yeah, I can do that. Let's pleat. Yeah. So here is the current state of affairs. I don't love it, I'll be honest. I think it looks really messy. I know the bustle like skirts are meant to be draped and stuff, but I didn't think this works. But basically what I did was I've actually undone the pleats that you just saw me do, because I don't think the pattern pleats are going to work for me. And instead I sort of tried to do what I did for my original Jane costume. I'll insert a photo here. But basically what I did for that one was I pleated up the sides. I didn't have 2 panels, it was just 1 panel at the front. So the pleats were much forwards. And then I just ironed them into place, but it wasn't as voluminous as this, I think, which is one of the issues. But I definitely want to lift the point enough to see some of the pleating. But I also don't want the sides to come up more than this. So here's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to sit down and have a look at extant Bustle's dresses, because I think it'll make me feel a bit more comfortable about this. And then what I'm holding out after I decide what to do is that I think I'm going to remove the pleats, undo the side seams, and cut into this front panel more and move the pleats forwards, and also remove some of the volume of this front panel, because I'll still have pleats and draping at the front, but it'll be less voluminous, so it'll lay nicer, I think. Yeah, that's the game plan. Progress, you guys, this is much better. I know it might not look very different, but I like it much more. So what I did was I revisited the pattern and I looked at extents, and what I noticed was that any that had this style really came far back. So the pleats are meant to be this far back, and in the pattern it's the same. And then the back piece is actually pleated down to a very small width here and then cascades down. So I think this is fine. The one thing I had to do that is a bit odd is that I actually pulled the last pleat forwards off the seam line just to change the angle of the pleat so that it lifted this deepest pleat at the bottom more. And I think this is good. I'm quite happy with this. You can see that, you know, there's slight discrepancies on the side, but they aren't meant to be exactly the same, because it is meant to be sort of a drapery kind of thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just double check my pleat widths and stuff, and then baste the pleating at the sides and possibly tack them down somewhere across here, and then try to gently press some of it, not all of it. I might actually just bring my iron over here and like do it on a dress form. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's the game plan for now. I am working on the back piece. So the back piece is really weird. It's like a square almost with a rounded corner, and then one of the other corners has this removed bit, and this is actually going to be the way it closes. It's going to close like that. But the way the pattern tells you to do this is that this back piece is meant to have a lining. mine will not have a lining because I don't have any suitable fabrics for it and I don't want to buy any more. So instead what I did is I cut out facings from my little cabbage scraps of silk and I just sewed it on right sides together and then pressed it almost like a binding, I guess, with a little like corner there. And it just needs a little bit more pressing because you can see there's a wrinkle there. But yeah, I think that worked really well. And then you have to do that on, so this edge is going to be pleated and then you have to do that on the bottom edges as well. So I'm going to cut out more strips of cabbage and then do this, which is a nice little finish. And I don't really mind if the yellow shows, like it's not like super upsetting. But this will help a little bit. I might make the ones for the hem a little wider. But yeah, I don't think that looks too bad. Hey guys, so I just wanted to update you real quick on what is going on. So I think the last thing I showed you was that I was hand sewing the facing to the inside of the back of the overskirt. And then meanwhile what I did was, so like the underskirt, I did not use the waistband pattern piece that came with the pattern because it was really wide and I don't like that. So instead all I did was I cut a scrap of my silk to be 3 inches wide, which means that the final waistband will be 1 inch wide. And then I copied, there's a marking on the actual pattern for the waistband which tells you how much should be pleated off the back of the skirt. So I transferred that marking to my waistband and then I just pleated the back. I used a fork and then I had to fudge one pleat, but it worked, whatever. And here it is. And then you do the same to the other back, just here. And then you pin on the waistband up until that hemmed point. So it's a bit of a weird like functionality where you end up pinning like the skirts, the front and the back of the skirt aren't actually attached to each other. So the front of the skirt will have like a tie and will also be on the waistband. And then the back of the skirt will also be on the waistband, but it's not actually sewn on the sides to the other. It'll make sense in the end, I promise. But I just wanted to mention that coincidentally, this is actually very close to what I did for my normal Jane costume that I made 4 years ago, as Instagram has reminded me today. And what I did for that costume is very similar, where the front and the back of the overskirts aren't together at all. They're just tied and they just sit, and I actually put a snap that connects them at the sides. But yeah, quite interesting to see that anyway. So the next step on here, according to the instructions, I had to reread them a couple of times because I find them a little bit confusing. I'm a very visual person, so it's just why I like videos on YouTube. So, place front apron on waistband matching center front to center of waistband. Apron sides should overlap backs by approximately 3 inches. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna try to do this and then show you what it looks like. Hey guys, so I seem to have lost some footage. I was just finishing editing the video and I seem to have lost some footage, so I thought I'd come on here and just explain. So the last thing I told you I was doing was that I was setting the waistband into the overskirt. Clearly that's done, but it actually wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. So you can see just there that the front of the skirt actually goes under the back by about 3 inches. And then the waistband was just sewn right sides together and then ironed, pressed up, flipped over to the inside and hand stitched down with whip stitch, like I always do, nothing original. The closure for that is just a couple of hooks and eyes. They are set along the gap there. And it's not the smoothest closure, that's the one thing I'll say. I don't like that closure very much, but because the bodice does have that little peplum, it does cover it. But otherwise it's not very smooth, and I wouldn't use this closure if it was a different kind of bodice. The other thing I did, which I was pretty sure I captured on camera, but you know what, whatever, is that I added some ties to this skirt as well. This isn't in the pattern at all, but basically what I did was I put this on the dress form and I marked where, so that these pleats stay in place, I marked where they should be, and then I added a bit of tape that goes on from the waistband and then is particularly basted at specific spots, like here, and particularly here, because I wanted this dip to not be too low. Yeah, it looks okay. And then I also basted on the pleats at the sides at some particular points. And the other thing I did was to not add another tape at the back where I want like the bustle to like scoop up. I just put in some pins really discreetly. Should be fine. I just didn't want to add more tapes. But yeah, I'm about to go shoot this costume today, so wish me luck. I always get really nervous wearing these things outside. But you know what? I gotta give you those good reveal shots. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is that I actually made a hat. Lol. It was really quick. I didn't plan it very much at all, but I basically wanted to evoke the explorer hat, but this is an actual 1880s hat pattern, and it's a small hat. I just heavily decorated with some purple trim and some flowers and feathers. And there's no footage of this because I actually made it between like 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. because I thought I was going to go shoot it the next day, and it turns out I didn't in the end. Anyway, I think it's pretty cute. I'm going to need to find a way to attach it to my head because I still don't have an appropriate hat pin. But yeah, and then the other things that complete the costumes are gloves, which are over there, and they're the ones I actually got from my original Jane costume. And then shoes, which are the American Duchess Manhattan boots, I think they're called. But you'll see those all